Okay guys, I came out here into the nature to film something, and I know full well that I did not come dressed properly. I've got some worn out tennis shoes where the whole bottom of my shoes are so worn down that basically where I step is slippery. And also I'm wearing like these bell bottom pants, so the whole bottom of my pants are like soaking wet, like, you know, some jean coat pants from the 90s. But the point of this was I came out in nature. I thought this would be a nice place to come and talk and record and be private, away from the city. And it's a Monday and it's raining, so I didn't think there'd be very many people out here. But as soon as I got here, I saw some people in a tent. And then also when I was walking a little bit away from their tent, I saw what seems to be their food stash. There are all these bags of groceries. So I thought, okay, well clearly these people, they're camping out here where you're not supposed to be camping, or they're homeless people living out in the woods. And if that's the case, I really don't want to encroach into their territory. And so I just tried to sneak around, find a little spot to record where it's still quiet. And this is what I would like to talk about today. And that is a little bit of my backstory, my origin story, mainly to talk about what my career path has been, how my career path has worked well with my lifestyles. If this is a lifestyle that you're considering, like car life, van life, RV life, maybe you'll want to look into some of these jobs as well. So first, let me show you around so you get to see a full view of how nice it is. It's very nice and green, and probably one of the reasons you'll see me talk about how great it is here is because I am from Arizona and I lived in the desert for many, many years where it's very, very hot and there's no green whatsoever. There is just dirt and rocks and, of course, cactus. So right now, being out where it's rainy, I greatly enjoy after living years and years and years in a place where it never rained. So let's talk about some of my work history. The reason I'm bringing this up is because a lot of my jobs, they really had to do with accounting or bookkeeping, and I did go to school for accounting. I took accounting classes, but I do want to make it clear that I am not a CPA. So there's a big difference between someone who is considered a bookkeeper and someone who is an actual accountant, CPA, certified public accountant, because they have a lot more responsibilities, and a CPA probably also gets paid a lot more. But so I do not necessarily have those responsibilities, or should I say liabilities, that if I were to make a mistake on my job, I could potentially lose my CPA license and maybe other legal consequences. But as a bookkeeper, some of the other jobs that kind of overlaps into maybe processing payroll for a company or working in the human resources department. I feel like it's kind of all one big grouping of if you were going to follow a certain career path. There's other things involved in accounting besides doing the math. And a lot of that has to do with being good at certain software, like I'll just say Excel, or other software as well that has to do with accounting. As long as you understand a little bit about percentages, calculating money, some of the stuff I did file taxes. So even though I was not a CPA who was authorized to file taxes, I would usually put all the paperwork together. And so without going into too boring details of that, the reason I'm mentioning this is because those were some of the first jobs I ever had, was working in accounting and bookkeeping. Eventually I ended up working for a hotel chain, which is they have locations worldwide, so it's a very large hotel chain, and I worked there for 5 years. And I had more than one role there because from the time that I was first hired, I was hired in the accounts receivable department, but then I was eventually promoted to the payroll department, and then I had another promotion after that. What they considered general ledger accounting, or the auditing department for the company. So part of the thing is, when you work for a company like that, there are certain benefits that come with working for a hotel, such as getting discounts on hotel rooms, or maybe even getting free hotel rooms, or special deals where if you stay 2 nights, you get the 3rd night free, or something like that. So I had worked there for many years, and so there were many benefits that came with that, with travel, free hotel stays, whatnot. Of course, there was like health insurance benefits and 401k and all of that. But I'm just talking about the fact that you could get free hotel room stays. So we're talking about living in a car. I mean, there might be times where you would like to not be in your car and you would like to stay in a hotel room. Okay, so moving on from that, I took that work experience, and so when I did start working for other hotels and resorts, One of the jobs that I took was what is considered a night auditor. Now, of course, night auditor, right in the title, means you work overnight. Now, the reason I'm going to talk about this being kind of like a major job aspect, perk, whatever, for living in your car is I think a lot of times people think, well, one of the things that they're worried about is trying to find parking at night and being safe out, out in the middle of the night, park somewhere in a parking lot or something like that. Well, if you're working all night, then really you would sleep during the daytime. During the daytime, there's a lot more parking places that you can sleep at, like going to a public shopping mall, grocery store parking lot. You can park your car in the daytime at the local library and sleep during the day, work at night. Okay, so that's a great lifestyle to consider, is if you have a night job, then you don't have to worry about your car when it's parked in the parking lot of a Walmart, or if you're just worried about personal safety and you don't like the idea if you're just out in your car and anyone could come along and mess with your car or mess with you in some way. So this is why I say you can during the nighttime and then sleep during the daytime. So I did that night auditor position for quite some time. Now, of course, there's an adjustment. If you're used to working during the daytime and sleeping at night, sometimes you've got to kind of adjust your clock of what's normal for you and when you like to sleep, because most people, they don't have that in them to go to sleep when it's the middle of the day, but eventually you'll adjust. You'll realize what a great lifestyle it is, because there are a lot more things you can get done in the daytime when it is your time off. Okay, so more jobs, and what eventually led to more travel for me was working for resorts. Now, I know in some of my other jobs I've talked about working for national parks, and national park jobs are usually temporary. You only work for a couple months out of the year, and you travel from one national park to another national park or whatever. But having that work experience in my background meant I was qualified for the job, so they were, of course, very quick to want to hire me to work for just about any hotel, because I had such a background experience in working for hotels in general. So that's something that, really facilitated my ability to travel more around the country if I wanted to. So I wanted to jump in here real quick. When I was going to college, the college that I went to had a program for like hotel management or something like that. I was not in the program, but I knew someone that was in that program, and so they did some sort of internship where they actually worked the front desk at a hotel. And so part of this was that they actually lived at the hotel in one of the hotel rooms. And I guess this is because when you work the front desk of a hotel, you're not just standing there for like an 8-hour shift waiting for people to check into rooms. Sometimes you'll be back in your room and then you kind of wait for them to like ring a bell to say they want to check in or get a room for the night. And so basically he could sit in his room, watch TV, and then wait for people to show up and ring the bell, and then he would go and check them in, do all the paperwork, take their payments, all of that stuff. But basically it was just sort of like having someone there on staff, on site for whenever it's needed, like middle of the night, whatever. So when I actually moved to Seattle, I tried to look for jobs that were like that for me, because I figured, well, I have hotel experience, so maybe I can find a hotel that will let me stay in one of the rooms and be their person that was on call. So what actually ended up happening was that I ended up getting a job at a hotel, and they already had a live-in person there, and that live-in person basically slept during the day and then worked the overnight shift. And so what they wanted me to be was a weekend relief person. And so what that meant was that I basically came in and I just sat there. It sounds silly, but I just sat there all day for like it seemed like 11 or 12-hour shift, where I was just there to be there in person on call, but it's not like I'm working for that many hours. There was like a television, they had a kitchen, so I could like basically just sit there and like wait for people to come and check in and want to check into their room. Or sometimes they might come to the front desk and request housekeeping services or something like that. So I was the weekend relief person. So this is why I said I had a job, a regular Monday through Friday, 9-to-5 job, like, that regular people have. Then on weekends, I would go and do this relief manager job. There was still the person that worked the overnight shifts, and they actually lived there on the property. But basically, I would come and just sit for like 11, 12 hours a day. I spent a lot of time watching television to be honest. For some reason, I can remember watching a lot of Golden Girl reruns were on TV. And this was in the Seattle area. And basically, I did that. So I at least had a place to stay as far as somewhere to be all day instead of just sitting in my car. Some of the other benefits of that was having access to housekeeping. So they have, you know, the big washer dryers and all that. So sometimes I would just use that time that I'm, you know, sitting and waiting for someone to ring the bell at the front desk. I would do my laundry, and I could do all my laundry at once in one of those really big washers, and it was free. I didn't have to pay for laundry. You know, another thing about housekeeping is they always have those little like sample soaps and shampoos and everything. You know, people come and they stay in their hotel room, but they don't use any of those samples, you know, but they bring their own stuff. So then they toss the samples aside. And so it's like, well, hey, don't throw that away. When housekeeping comes and they prep a room, they will put a brand new roll of toilet paper. And then what ends up happening is people only use like a little bit of the toilet paper, and then there's the whole rest of the roll. They just throw that in the trash. That seems really wasteful. So I'm just saying that there's a lot of stuff that gets tossed aside and thrown out that could really just be used. So having access to housekeeping, having access to any of those freebies that they were just going to throw in the trash anyways, you know, I was always welcome to take those. Okay, let's do one more topic that I want to cover in this video, and it has to do with jobs and career paths and everything. And that has to do with working in bookkeeping and accounting. And another path that I took once I ended up moving to Seattle. A lot of times you can be an independent bookkeeper. And this means that you basically will come into a business, and sometimes they only need someone to come in maybe once a week, once a month, to file their sales tax or to do their payroll every 2 weeks or something like that. And so once you've gotten your name out there and had a few clients, and they might recommend you to some other companies, I kind of got into that because that was already my background. And then I ended up taking a job at a place where they had their bookkeeper that would come in. She came in, I think, like once a week to kind of go over the books. And I got to talking to her and asking her, like, well, you know, how did you get into this? How is it that, you know, you work for yourself, you don't have a boss, you're an independent bookkeeper? And then she started saying that she might need some extra help, and she wanted to bring me in to help on a few jobs. And that kind of led to where she was saying, you know, well, maybe I'll have you just do this one business. And, you know, of course, we worked out a percentage of how much money she would get and how much money I would get. But that gave me a little, you know, dip your toe in the water, so to say, of what it took for me to try to figure out what it would be for me to work as my own independent bookkeeper. So that's what one of the first things I did was I started looking at jobs where they would want someone to come in like once a week, once a month. They've got their bills that they need to pay. Bills only need to be paid probably once a month as it is, like the electric bill, the phone bill, things like that, pay your monthly insurance. And so they have someone come in to do that. And you might think like, well, that seems so simple. Why doesn't the owner of the company do that? Well, that's why owners of companies are business. They want to put that work out to somebody else who can handle it for them. That's where I come in. When I first moved to Seattle, you know, I did look into this one bar that was in the downtown Seattle area that was looking for a bookkeeper. And they wanted me to come in, I believe it was like 2 days a week. And I was already working as it was. So it was really hard for me to coordinate that schedule between me now having my regular job and then doing this bookkeeping on the side. So I ended up not pursuing that. But what I did end up doing eventually, and there is the whole thing about the fact that I live in Washington, and in Washington there are certain things that are legal in Washington that aren't legal in other places, and I'll just refer to that as the green leaf business is legal in Washington. And so that's eventually what I ended up pursuing, was working as a bookkeeper for numerous companies that are involved in that. And there's a lot of special accounting that goes into that, because those stores are typically a cash-only business. There's a lot of banking issues when it comes to collecting the money and then having to pay payroll to people when you're in a cash-only business. Cash only because of certain federal laws, but totally legal in Washington. And also there is a lot of taxes involved, a much higher tax rate for selling that product. And so that was what I was involved in. And I had to learn specialized software that is just for that business. There's different software programs, not just one. And so I got very much involved in that. And I was doing that for about 3 years.
in Washington. It gave me really great experience, and I will just put it this way, it does pay really well. Even the very entry-level positions paid very well. And so me working as an independent bookkeeper, that meant I had probably about like 20 different store locations. So each one has to be processed separately as far as their books and how things are reported for taxes and everything. So each store is going to have their own like internet, phone bill, electric bills. They all need to be processed separately. And so being a bookkeeper for those numerous locations definitely was a big step in my career. And I think is definitely something you might want to look into if that sounds interesting at all to you. Maybe it doesn't, but I'm just letting you know how it is that I kind of progressed in my career throughout life, from just starting out in some, office cubicle type jobs, which people may think is very mind-numbing jobs, being the bean counter and the number cruncher. But that's pretty much where I started and worked my way up to working more independently and having some good success.
So at this point, I'll probably end the video, but I hope that this can give you some ideas of different jobs that you can think about and pursue in the future. And I will see you on the next one.